There's a specific feeling that you get when you just sat through a 90-minute meeting and walked out with nothing but a follow-up meeting on the calendar. The rest of your afternoon is in pieces. Your actual work is still sitting there waiting for you to return, and somewhere in the back of your mind, you're thinking that this cannot be what my life is supposed to look like. If you know that feeling, you are in exactly the right place. And by the time this episode is done, you'll know how to make sure that you never waste an hour in a pointless meeting again, whether you're the person running them or just trying to survive them. So stick with me for a little bit. This one is worth it. Here's what we're going to cover in today's episode. We're going to start by looking at why meetings are costing organizations far more than anyone is tracking. Then we'll dig into the specific things that turn good intentions into wasted afternoons. From there, I'm going to walk you through a complete framework for designing and running meetings that produce real outcomes. And at the end, I'll give you 3 things that you can do before your next meeting tomorrow to start seeing results immediately. This one may be a little on the long side because this topic deserves full treatment, but I promise you that every second is going to earn its time. I want to kick things off by introducing you to a version of Toby's taco truck that almost ran itself into the ground. Not because the food was bad. The food was outstanding. Every Monday morning, I sat down with my 2 part-time crew members for what I started calling the weekly sync. There was no agenda. There was no defined outcome. There was no set end time. Just 3 folks sitting around a prep counter with lukewarm coffee and an open-ended conversation about everything. We talked about the weekend crowds. We debated whether the new verde recipe needed more tomatillo. We went back and forth about reordering supplies. And every single week, without fail, we argued about who was responsible for ordering limes. Every week, it was the same arguments and the same non-resolution, the same confused looks as we wrapped up and went back to work with nothing clearly decided. After 6 weeks of this, I realized that the meetings were not helping us run the truck. They were creating a false sense of agreement and alignment while leaving every actual problem unresolved. We were communicating without coordinating, and that distinction matters enormously. Communication without coordination is theater. It feels productive, but nothing ever moves. Now, my taco truck operation is obviously small scale and fictitious, but the same dynamic plays out in companies of 200 and companies of 20,000. The research on this is sobering. A study published in the Harvard Business Review found that 71% of senior managers consider most meetings unproductive and inefficient. That same study found that 65% of managers said that meetings prevent them from completing their own work. And we're not talking about the occasional wasted afternoon. We're talking about a systemic drain on the most valuable resource any organization has. It's people's time and attention. The financial math is straightforward and worth doing. Have a meeting with 10 people. If, let's say, the average salary in that room is $80,000 a year, the fully loaded cost per person, per hour, including bennies and overhead and taxes and everything else, is somewhere around $55 to $65. Do the math there, and 1 hour of that meeting costs the organization between $550 and $650. Schedule 3 of those per week and run them 52 weeks a year. You're spending between $82,000 and $97,000 per year for a single recurring meeting series. Now, ask yourself, is every meeting on your calendar generating that kind of return? For most organizations, the answer is emphatically no. And here's the really uncomfortable part. Nobody's set out to waste that money. Meetings multiply because communication feels productive, because calling a meeting feels like taking action, because the alternative, deciding things asynchronously or not at all, carries its own risks. But the cost of a bad meeting culture is not just financial. The hidden cost is what it does to the people living inside of it. When people sit through meeting after meeting after meeting that waste their time, a specific kind of disengagement sets in. It's subtle at first. They stop preparing. They stop engaging. They start doing email from their laptops while someone else talks. And eventually, they start to believe that their time does not matter to the organization, because the organization's behavior tells them exactly that. That erosion of trust and engagement is far more expensive than any meeting budget line item, and it's almost entirely preventable. Here's what makes this problem genuinely tricky. Most bad meetings are not run by bad people. They're run by well-meaning people who never learned what good looks like. Think about it. Where do we learn how to run a meeting? There is no standardized training for it. There is no course in college or high school even that we take. Most of us learned by watching the people around us. We learned by watching the people around them. And bad meeting habits are not genetic. They're transmitted. Over years of working with teams and observing meetings across different industries and different organization sizes, I've seen the same failure patterns occur. 5 of them account for most bad meetings. Failure mode number 1 is there is no clear purpose. Walk into most meetings and ask everyone in the room why it's happening, and you'll get a different answer from every person. Or even worse, you'll get a shrug. Weekly sync is not a purpose. Team alignment is not a purpose. A purpose is something that you can state in one sentence, something specific enough that you could look at it at the end of the meeting and honestly answer the question, did we accomplish this? We're meeting to discuss what vendor to use for the third quarter campaign launch is the purpose. We are meeting to update the team on the project status is borderline, because you are delivering an update. But there are better ways to do that, and we'll get to those in a minute. The test here is simple. If you cannot state the purpose in one clear sentence, the meeting is not ready to be scheduled. Failure mode number 2, the wrong people are in the room. There's a concept called decision fatigue. The more people involved in a decision, the longer it takes, the more it gets bogged down in side conversations, and the overall lower quality that the final call tends to be. Research done by Cloverpop found that decisions made by teams of 2 to 5 people are nearly twice as fast as those made by groups of 7 or more, and they tend to produce better outcomes. Every extra person in a meeting has a cost. You're taking their time. You're adding their opinions, questions, and tangents to the conversation. You're expanding the discussion surface area in ways that do nothing but slow you down. The rule I use is if someone can be effectively updated by a 2-paragraph meeting summary, they do not need to be in the meeting. Invite them to the output, not the process. Failure mode number 3. There is no agenda in advance of the meeting. An agenda sent 5 minutes before the meeting is theater. Nobody read it. Nobody prepared, and nobody has thought about the topic, their positions, or the information that they need to share. What happens in those types of meetings? The first 10 to 15 minutes are spent getting everyone up to speed. You're not discussing, you are briefing. And a briefing is something that you can send in an email. An agenda sent 24 hours in advance changes the dynamic entirely. People arrive prepared. The discussion starts from a higher baseline, and the meeting moves faster and produces more in the long run. A great agenda includes 4 things. First, the purpose in one sentence. Second, a list of topics with time allocations for each. Third, anything attendees need to read or prepare before walking in. Fourth, the specific outcomes that the meeting needs to produce. And the last one is critical. Not a we'll discuss the budget, but we will decide which line items to cut from the third quarter target. Failure mode number 4. There is no decision ownership. A we should look into that, or a let's circle back on this, or somebody should probably follow up on X, Y, or Z. I like to call those action orphans. The next steps that belong to everyone and therefore belong to no one. They get written down in the meeting notes. They feel like progress in the moment, and then they just vanish. Every single action item that comes out of a meeting needs to have 3 things: a name, a deadline, and a definition of done. Not a somebody will research vendors, but Maria will compare the top 3 vendors and present a recommendation by Thursday at noon. That is an action item. The first is a wish. And failure mode number 5 is no discipline on time. Starting a meeting late is a form of disrespect. It tells the people who showed up on time that their punctuality does not matter. It rewards the people who showed up late. And it trains everyone in the organization that your meeting start times are suggestions, not commitments. Running over is just as damaging. It signals that you did not plan the meeting well enough to fit it in the time that you requested. And it creates a ripple effect through everyone's calendar for the rest of the day. The discipline to start on time and to end on time is one of the most visible signals that a leader can send about how much they value their team's time. Don't underestimate that. There's a deeper problem here, and it's why is this harder than it needs to be? There is something else that I want to address before we get into the solutions, because I think it helps explain why so many organizations struggle with this, even when everyone knows that the meeting culture is bad. Meetings are social. They create a sense of belonging, visibility, and being in the loop. For many leaders, calling a meeting is how they demonstrate action, leadership, and concern. It's how they stay connected to their teams, and it's how they feel like they are moving forward. Stopping a meeting altogether, or canceling a recurring touch base, or sending a document instead of gathering everyone in a room can feel like abandonment, like you're pulling away. This is the emotional subtext that swirls underneath bad meeting cultures, and it's worth naming. The fix is not just operational. It requires a shift in how we define productivity. Being busy in meetings is not the same as being effective. And the leaders who internalize that distinction are the ones whose organizations run better. The best measure of a leader's meetings is not how many they run. It's how much clarity, decision-making, and momentum that their meetings produce. That is what we're building toward here. Enough of the talk, enough of the banter, let's just build the thing. Effective meetings have 3 phases: before the meeting, during the meeting, and after the meeting. Most people only think about the during the meeting part, and that's why most meetings underperform. We'll break this into buckets. Bucket or phase number 1 is the before the meeting. The most effective thing that you can do for any meeting happens before anyone walks in the door or logs onto the Zoom call. Step number 1 is to decide if the meeting needs to even happen at all. Not every situation requires a meeting. Before you create a calendar event, ask yourself which of the following 3 categories this falls into. Is this information that I need to share? A document, a recorded video, a voice memo, or a well-written email might handle this better than a meeting. People can read at their own pace. They can reference written content later, and they do not need to synchronize their schedules to receive information. Or is this a decision we need to make? Now we're getting into meeting territory, but only if the decision genuinely requires real-time dialogue. If it can be made asynchronously via a shared document with comments, do that instead. Is this a problem or a challenge that we need to solve together right now, this is where a meeting earns its space on the calendar. Real-time collaboration on complex, nuanced problems is genuinely difficult to replicate asynchronously. If you are at this spot, then schedule the meeting. Step number 2 is to know what kind of meeting that you're running. Genuinely speaking, there are 3 types of meetings, and treating them interchangeably is one of the most common mistakes that leaders make. Information sharing meetings exist to get people up to speed. Kickoffs, updates, briefings. The danger with these is that most of them do not need to exist. If you're sharing information and not seeking any real-time input or response, a document or a recorded update does the same job without requiring everyone to be in the same place at the same time. Decision-making meetings are the most important type and the most valuable to get right. The keys to success here is number 1, get only the decision makers in the room. Number 2, ensure that everyone arrives having absorbed the relevant context beforehand. And number 3, use the meeting itself solely for deliberation. If you spend the first half of a decision-making meeting explaining the background, the meeting was not ready to happen. Working sessions are collaborative creation events. You're building something together, a plan, a proposal, a strategy, a solution. These meetings benefit from a delegated facilitator, a visible shared workspace, and clear time boxes for each phase of the work. Without structure, they drift into circular conversations that feel productive and produce nothing. Step number 3 is to write the agenda and send it in advance. Your agenda is not a bullet list of topics. It's a contract with the people in the room about how their time will be spent. A complete agenda includes 5 elements: the purpose of the meeting in 1 sentence, a list of the topics with the time budgeted for each one, the specific outcome that the meeting needs to produce, any pre-work or reading that is required ahead, and the roles assigned. Who is facilitating the meeting? Who's taking notes? And who is watching the clock? Send out the agenda at least 24 hours before the meeting. For important or complex sessions, 48 hours is better. The goal is to give people enough time to actually prepare for the decision that they're going to be asked to help make. Step number 4 is to manage the invitation list ruthlessly. Every person that you add to a meeting invitation is a cost. Add them only when their presence is genuinely necessary to the purpose. I used a simple 2-question filter. First, does this person need to make or directly inform the decision? And second, is there anything about their absence that would compromise the quality of the meeting's outcome? If both answers are no, they go on the distribution list for the summary, not the invitation list for the meeting. Now we move into phase 2. The meeting is live. So here's how to run the thing. Number 1 is to start on time. No exceptions. No, let's wait a few more minutes for more people. The people in the room showed up on time. They deserve to start on time. If someone arrives late, then they join the meeting already in progress. That is their problem to manage, not the rest of the room's. This one habit, done consistently over time, changes the meeting culture of an entire organization. It takes about 3 weeks of firm enforcement before people start showing up on time. But once they do, the dynamic of every meeting shifts. Number 2 is open with the purpose and the agenda. Spend 90 seconds at the start of every meeting stating plainly its purpose, reviewing the agenda, and confirming the expected outcome. This resets everyone onto the same page, even if they came in distracted from whatever they were doing before the meeting started. It also signals immediately that this meeting has a plan. Step number 3 is to actively facilitate. Do not just chair. There is a difference between chairing a meeting and facilitating one. A chair runs through the agenda. A facilitator actively manages the energy, directs the discussion toward outcomes, and draws out quieter voices and keeps the conversation on track. Good facilitation includes keeping an eye on the clock and calling time on discussions that run long. It includes redirecting tangents with a specific phrase, such as, "That's important. Let's put it in the parking lot to make sure that we address it later." It includes checking in explicitly when a decision needs to be made. "We have two options on the table. Are we ready to decide, or do we need more information first?" Number 4 is to use the parking lot. Every meeting generates tangents. New ideas surface. Someone raises a concern that is adjacent but not part of the current agenda item. The instinct is to either ignore it, which frustrates the person who raised it, or to follow up, which can derail the entire meeting. The parking lot is the third option. Write the topic down somewhere visible, whether on a whiteboard, a shared screen, or in your notes. Acknowledge it out loud. Things like, "Good point, let's capture that and we'll come back to it later." And then commit to a resolution. We'll either address this after if we clear the agenda, or we'll schedule a separate time for that specifically. And then move on. This validates the person who raised the concern or asked the question and protects the meeting all at the same time. Number 5 is to close every discussion item cleanly. Before moving on to the next agenda item, close the current one specifically. State what was decided and name the owner of any follow-up action along with the specific deadline. Ask the room if there are any questions or objections before moving on to the next topic. This process takes 30 seconds and it eliminates the situations in which 3 different people walk out of the meeting with 3 different understandings of what was decided by the group. And number 6 is end on time. Running over is a failure of preparation. If you're consistently running over, your agenda is too ambitious for your time block, or your discussions are not being managed tightly enough. Either way, shorten the agenda or lengthen the meeting and then communicate that choice in advance. End every meeting with a 2-minute wrap-up. State plainly what was decided. Read back the action items with the owners and the deadlines, and confirm the next meeting if one is needed. Then let people go about their day. Next, we move into phase 3, the after the meeting. The meeting itself is over, and here's where most of the value either gets locked in or it leaks away. Number 1 is to send the summary within 24 hours. The meeting summary is not a transcript. It does not need to communicate and document every discussion. It needs to capture 3 things: what was decided, who owns what, and when each item is due. 2 to 3 paragraphs, maximum. Send it to everyone who attended and anyone who was directly affected by the decisions. Prompt, concise summaries build a culture of accountability. They also eliminate the need to relitigate decisions in future meetings because there is a written record of what was accomplished in the prior meeting. Number 2 is to track action items in a shared, visible place. Email is where action items go to die. Once a task disappears into a thread, its survival depends entirely on whether the recipient prioritizes it, remembers it, and acts on it independently. Capture action items in a shared space, a project management tool, a shared document, or a running spreadsheet that everyone has access to. At the start of each recurring meeting, review the open items from the last one. This closes the accountability loop and it builds momentum over time. Number 3 is to evaluate the meeting. This one is underused and honestly underrated. At regular intervals, take a quick look back at the meetings that you've been running. Ask, what were the outcomes? Were the decisions made? Were the action items completed? Was the time allocation appropriate? You don't need a formal survey for this. A 5-minute reflection after a meeting or a quarterly review of your recurring calendar is usually enough. The goal is to treat your meetings as something that you design and improve over time, not just something that happens on your calendar. Speaking of your calendar, it's time to do a little spring cleaning. Here's a quick exercise that will improve your professional life immediately. Pull up your calendar from the last 2 weeks. Look at every recurring meeting that you either attend or lead, and for each one, ask 5 questions. Number 1, what is the stated purpose of this meeting? Could you answer that question right now without looking anything up? If not, that's a red flag. Number 2, did the purpose get accomplished the last 3 times that meeting ran? If the answer is consistently no, the meeting is not working in its current form. Number 3, was every person in the room or on the call genuinely necessary? Or were some people there just to be kept in the loop? Number 4, what decisions were made in the last 3 sessions? If the answer is none that I can remember, then the meeting is not producing any value. And number 5, were the action items from the previous session followed through on before this one started? If nobody's tracking them, then they're not happening. What you find in this audit will likely surprise you. Most people discover at least 2 or 3 recurring meetings that could be eliminated entirely, and I encourage you to do it. The people on those invites will be relieved, not upset. A quick word on meeting culture before we go further. Individual meeting habits matter, but an organization's meeting culture flows from the top down, and it flows quickly. I've seen organizations where senior leadership is obsessed with efficiency, and the entire culture reflects it. Meetings start on time, end on time, produce decisions, and lead to documented follow-through. People protect each other's calendars the way they would protect a budget line item. I have also seen organizations where the leaders treat meetings as social events. They show up unprepared and let conversations run wherever they lead and schedule time that they cannot commit to. Within 6 months of a new leader with those habits joining, the entire meeting culture of the organization degrades to match. If you lead people, your behavior in meetings teaches your team what meetings are supposed to look like. Model the standard that you want to see. Start on time, come prepared, make decisions, follow through, and then finally end on time. Do this consistently, and the people around you will learn to do the same. We've covered a lot of ground today, so let me give you 3 things that you can put into practice immediately, starting with your next meeting. Number 1 is to send an agenda. Even if your next meeting is tomorrow, send an agenda tonight, even a short one. Purpose in 1 sentence. 2 or 3 topics with time limits and an expected outcome. And watch what happens to the quality of the conversation. Number 2 is to end that meeting with a decision log. Before anyone leaves the room or hangs up the Zoom call, read back every decision made and every action item assigned with the owner's name and the actual due date. This takes 2 minutes, and it makes everything that was discussed in the meeting both real and accountable. And finally, number 3, pick the meeting on your calendar that you dread most. The one that you show up to every week, wondering why you're there. Run the 5-question audit on it and either fix it using the blueprint that we've covered or cancel it and send the summary as a document instead. Those 3 moves alone will produce visible results before the end of the next week. And once you see them work, you'll want to apply the full framework everywhere. Meetings themselves are not the enemy. Badly designed meetings are. When they're built with intention, run with discipline, and followed through on with accountability, meetings are among the most powerful coordination tools that a team has. They create alignment when alignment is needed. They accelerate decisions, and they surface problems before they become crises. The difference between a meeting culture that drains an organization and one that drives it is not resources or technology. It's design It's the decision made by individual leaders on individual teams to treat the time they take from others as sacred. Be that leader. Thanks again for spending some time with me today on Toby Talks. If this episode gave you something useful, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and check out all the resources from this episode and the others at toby-talks.com. And I'll see you in the next one.